well, how we communicated as a team, and it was a good outcome.
And really, you just said that straight up. What could we do better?
Yeah.
Do you not think straight away that you did a good job? The guy survived. Do you know, it felt like we criticize ourselves and say, surely we could have done something better, instead of saying, God, that was such a good job, team. This guy survived.
Yeah. I think when you look back, there's always something that you might think you could do better. Because I was so fresh. That was the other thing. For me, I had gone through the training. I had gone through all the bags, but I was so fresh. It was my first flight out on my own.
And that was making you nervous.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And like I said, you just don't have all those people to rely on. And we know in a resuscitation situation, particularly in a hospital, there is sometimes too many people. So we kind of just work together. We work together very closely.
Do you have a Lucas on board? Do you know the resuscitation?
Don't. We do on a helicopter. We do, purely because it's such a smaller environment. But in the aircraft, we don't know. So no, the Lucas is only a helicopter piece of equipment. We do have a bit more room in the fixed wing. Mm-hmm. But that's one person does CPR, someone else, and then you swap, because it's quite fatiguing doing effective CPR for more than 2 minutes per cycle.
Oh, and what about airway?
So in the aircraft, there's a resus doctor seat, and we've got a nurse's seat. So generally the doctor's at the resus airway end. Mm-hmm. In this particular situation, airway was secured. He was ventilating very well.
No, he's ventilated.
The least of our problems, thankfully. Yep. His heart was just absolutely shocked. Yeah. But so he survived. It was, I remember going home that night. It was about 10 o'clock at night, and I literally think I fell into a heap, because I was like, what have I got myself into? It was such a good outcome. And we got feedback a few days later that he had survived and he'd been discharged and that sort of thing.
What do you think that debriefing was? Was it when you got to the hangar that you...
No, it was the next day.
Okay.
My boss, Paul, so he actually phoned me the next day and we discussed it. And I had spoken to the doctor that I was with, and we both just kept chatting over a few days about it.
That's quite important, isn't it, to work through things?
Absolutely. Debrief all the time, I think, is a vital part of nursing, because you need to be able to talk about these things and, reflect on it, good or bad. It's the right thing to do, and I think it's the most appropriate thing to do, particularly in situations that are quite traumatic. Even for junior staff or the most senior staff, things happen and we don't know how they're going to affect us. So I think it's a wise thing to do is to talk about it.
I mean, at the end of the day, we are human, aren't we? And all our knowledge can't account for every little situation that we'll come into. Half the time we have to think on our feet very quickly, try and draw on some knowledge that you've got, because you won't have the answers to everything. And it can be quite draining. And that's why that debriefing and being able to talk to other people and knowing that you're still doing a good job. Nobody does a bad job.
Exactly. We don't go to work to do a bad job. We always go to work to try our best.
Yeah.
And that's something that I do. I go with the intentions every day to try my best.
That's right.
For the best outcomes for the patient and their family, and the community that they've come from. Sometimes they're not always the best outcomes, but we try our best.
Hey, you know what complements great conversations is fine wine, and there is nothing finer than a bottle of Plantagenet wine. Whether you're relaxing after a long shift, at a gathering with friends, or lounging by the fire, Plantagenet wine provides the perfect complement to any occasion. Plantagenet wine is meticulously crafted in one of the most remote locations in the world, using finest ingredients available to create elegant and sophisticated wines that you deserve. Head to plantagenetwines.com for your online order and enter the code NURSES at the checkout to receive 10% off your order with free shipping Australia-wide on any order over $180. So stock up for winter or plan the perfect gift with the most enchanting collection of wines you'll ever try. Head to plantagenetwines.com and enter the code NURSES to start your Plantagenet experience. Conversations with Nurses is proudly sponsored by Fat Burners Only, Australia's #1 online supplement store. Nursing is a demanding job and requires your body to be in tip-top condition, so why not head to Fat Burners Only? Australia's go-to store for supplements online. FBO provides you with a full range of supplements to support your hectic lifestyles and, of course, the energy and focus you need for those long shifts. FBO has Australia-wide free express shipping so your products arrive at your door faster. And as a special treat for our listeners, enter the code NURSES at the checkout to receive 10% off every order, with proceeds going towards supporting this very podcast. Look good, feel great, and operate at peak performance with fat burners only. Proudly supporting nurses in association with your number one nursing podcast, Conversations with Nurses. I had a list of questions to ask you, and it doesn't go like that. That's like nursing.
Things change rapidly.
Exactly. You have your patient list and what you're going to do for the day, and then it can go skew if.
And in particular in our environment, in the aeromedical environment, things change all the time. You could be flying somewhere, and when that sat phone rings, it's for one of two reasons.
You've got a more urgent call.
To divert you to somewhere else, or a clinical change in the patient you're going, or to add another patient on from somewhere else.
Yeah.
Just stop in here and pick someone else up. Things change all the time. Weather changes. It's an ever-changing environment, that one.
Has it ever got to a stage where the weather's been so bad that you haven't been able to get back to Perth, that you've had to call into another hospital somewhere and manage that until the weather's got good enough to fly?
Yeah. Well, there's a little while ago we had to land at Kalgoorlie of all places. We couldn't land at Jandakot because of the weather, so we had to go back. A little while ago we were flying to Narrogin, very foggy. We couldn't land. So that particular night was night shift. We came back.
Yeah.
Obviously we couldn't pick the patient up. And we also have an ambulance. We call it the Haru. So off we went in the Haru and drove 2.5 hours down to Narrogin in the middle of the night to pick this patient up and 2.5 hours back.
What's a Haru?
So it's called a high acuity retrieval unit. It's basically an ambulance.
Yep.
Equipped out like a normal ambulance is. So we couldn't retrieve him by the air, so we retrieved him by the road. And in fact, I picked up that same gentleman just a few weeks ago. And he said, you're picking me up in the air today? I said, good weather. Don't need to drive to come and get you. It's too long. But that was about a 5.5 hour round trip. So no matter where you are, we will try and retrieve you by road, helicopter or aircraft.
And not piggyback.
No, definitely not.
Jeevers. So the equipment in the I've spoken to Paul, your boss, and in previous podcasts he's talked about how well it's fitted out, and the helicopters as well. It's like a little mobile ICU unit, isn't it?
Yep. So we have everything in that aircraft that a resus bay in a hospital would have, or an intensive care. We've got a ventilator, a monitor that can defibrillate and pace the patient. We've got airway equipment, drugs, everything that we'll need to keep that person alive.
So it's like being in the back of the ambulance, but you're flying through the air, so you have a seatbelt on?
Yes.
Do you have turbulence that you might go, oh?
Yes, all the time. And sometimes it's horrible, which, drawing up drugs with turbulence, it's very tricky. Breaking off little valves, it's really tricky. Yeah,
where you get the shakes or a jolt or something.
Correct.
Like that.
You can't always get out a seat if the pilot says, don't get out your seat. And if I've got to go down the back to attend to a patient, I say to the pilot, hey, I'm just getting out of my seat, because obviously I'll have to take my headset off to go down the back and I can't hear any comms or anything that's going on. So it's always important to let them know what we are doing so they are not trying to tell me something and obviously I'm not listening because I'm not on the headset.
Communication is always important.
Correct. We are all a team.
And that's one thing I wish people would know or understand, that you have to communicate to each other, because we can't imagine what's going on. We can't read people's minds.
I always say to my colleagues in the hospital, it's 24-hour nursing care. If there's something that you couldn't get done, hand it over. We're there 24/7.
Exactly.
If you didn't get time to give that patient a bed bath, the next shift can do it. It's not going to impact their care at that direct point in time.
Not everyone has to be showered at 7:00 in the morning.
Correct. So it's important for new nurses in particular. They're on a busy ward and, I haven't got this done or that done. You just hand it over to the next shift. Communicate and hand over that you haven't got it done. Don't not hand it over or communicate. Hand it over so everyone knows what needs to be done.
But the other thing I would like people to know too, when you've been handed over that something hasn't been done, don't just, oh God, like this. I've had that where you haven't quite got everybody's obs done or all the charts are up to date because you've had a sort of critical situation happen and it's taken all your time. When you go to hand over and said, I haven't had time to shower Mrs. Owen, I haven't done her dressing and this one's still waiting to go, whatever. And people have just gone, oh my God, what have you been doing all day? Don't have that attitude.
Yes, 100%.
You are a team.
Yeah.
I don't want to come on duty and find that you've been sitting at the desk because you're too lazy to do anything.
Yeah.
Where you could have helped us out.
It'd be like when we go to a remote nursing post, there might be one nurse and there's 3 patients. She can only do what she can do with her resources. And if something needs to be done, put a catheter in, then
do it.
I can do it. Everyone's a team. We've all got the main goal in just for the patient.
I'm going to give you this scenario now because you just mentioned about catheterization. So we're student nurses. We've learned how to catheterize people.
Yep.
We've had plenty of practice catheterizing people. Then I go to a hospital where we're working in theatre and they're doing some joint replacements and they're waiting for somebody to come and do a catheter on this male patient. And I said, well, I can do the catheter if you want. Oh, no, you have to be deemed competent to do a catheter by the staff development nurse in the hospital before you can do this. Because I'm an agency nurse, I'm there for the day. They don't know my qualifications and my experience. And I said, well, is a staff development nurse available so that she can come and deem me competent? Oh, no, she's on a day off. I said, so how we've got this patient on the table, anaesthetized, and everyone's waiting for this catheter to go in and nobody's stepping up to do this. And yet I'm available to do this. And I've got a surgeon there and an anaesthetist watching me. Can you not deem me competent? Oh, no, we can't deem you competent. So I just did it anyway. But we've got qualifications. We're registered nurses. We're qualified to do these things.
Yes, I don't understand the politics of things sometimes, particularly when you're probably nurse for how many years?
Over 40.
Oh, over 40 years.
Yeah.
You can see you're not a grad that's just come in. I'm glad you just did it because it had to be done, didn't it? So who would have done it if you didn't do it?
No, you can't wake the patient up and say, sorry, we're not doing your joint because the nurse wouldn't put a catheter in.
Exactly.
That's what I mean. Sometimes you have to make decisions that might go against policy, but it's for the patient.
Yes.
We are there for the patient at the end of the day. Okay. So let's look at the question book.
Okay. Go ahead. Fire away.
So how do you prepare logically or emotionally to deliver this nursing care? Because if you get that phone call, and it might be something that's a little bit out of your league or something out of your experience, but you know you have to do it.
Yeah, so maybe something that I haven't
experienced before?
Yeah, so if it's nurse only, I'll definitely make sure I do a thorough go through the pre-flight assessment. If I've got any concerns, I will speak to the doctor who's done the assessment or phone the hospital where this patient's at.
Okay, so explain that. So that's what I want to know. Somebody's actually assessed the patient.
Correct. So a doctor would have done an assessment. What's the story basically? Why does this person need to be transferred?
Yes.
Just say it's a fractured hip. But they might have all these other comorbidities going on or they've got a pneumonia at the same time. So depending on what the clinical scenario is determines, yep, that's my bread and butter. I do that all the time. Or I'll just have a quick chat to the doctor because I've got a few questions, or ring up the hospital to see where they are. Is this being done or have they got this? Or can you just tell me a little about what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm happy, then yep, absolutely go retrieve the patient. If not, we can call what we call the OSM, which is our nurse that sort of supervisors, and talk to them about the scenario, get advice from them and go from there. If it's doctor accompanied, then there's 2 of us to try and work it out. Or if I need maybe some extra drug orders, if I think the person might be quite anxious or have some mental health history or withdrawing from alcohol or something like that, and I've got no diazepam, I might just say, can we get a standing order for a bit of diazepam?
Would you carry that on the flight?
We do carry it on the flight. We don't carry much, but that's one of the drugs we do carry. Just to make it a little bit more safer for me instead of trying to, race around in the back of an aircraft making a phone call. At least I've got that order. I like to have standing orders knowing what I've got before I go. And the doctors upstairs at the operations centre, they're busy. So sometimes you might be put on hold unless it's urgent, of course. So it's always better, like I said, plan and prepare before you go.
Yeah.
Ring up the receiving hospital. Have they got a catheter in? Have they been toileted? Have they been fed? Have they got antibiotics due?
Yeah.
If they're due in flight, can you send that particular antibiotic out? Because we don't carry many antibiotics in flight.
Mhm.
Are they due insulin? So I've got a good plan in the back of my mind, because if I've got